Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 729. I had the white pieces and kicked off with e4. My opponent went e6, the French defense, and I play d4, the main response, just putting another pawn in the center. He goes d5. And now I go knight c3, also the main response. Although there's many interesting choices for white here. Knight d2 is the Tarrasch, e5 is the advanced variation, and e takes d5 is the exchange variation. The exchange variation is thought to be kind of drawish, but the other three lines are all probably good for white, although they can be tricky to play sometimes. Anyway, knight c3 is also tricky, but it's fun. And this allows a couple of variations. Bishop b4 is the win hour. I always enjoy that. And knight f6 is the classical. If he takes, d takes e4, that's the Rubinstein variation. So the knight comes out. And there's two ways to play this. I've played both of these. For a while I was playing e5, the Steinitz variation, kind of chasing that knight around and trying to keep all the pieces on. But recently I've gone back to bishop g5. And this is a simpler way to play. The bishops typically get traded off after bishop to e7. You kick the knight. There are other moves here. D takes e4 and bishop to b4 are both interesting lines for black as well. But in practice, this is the one I see most often, bishop to e7. And then you kick the knight, goes back, and now you can exchange that bishop off. There's also the interesting move here, h4. This is the Alekhine-Chittard attack, and it's a pawn sack because black can take twice on g5 there and win that pawn, but it opens up the h-file, and there's some interesting attacking chances for white in this position. White has more space on the king side, and easy development for his pieces. His pieces are coming into the game very quickly. So it's an interesting way to play, but I've actually never played that myself. So I just stick to my old tried and true, just this exchange. And then you have to shore up the center immediately because this pawn often comes under fire. Although it turns out in this position, my opponent played the immediate c5. That turns out to be a mistake. He needs to do something first, like a6. a6 would prevent the knight from coming into b4, b5 there, or just castling, getting the king out of trouble. So those are both good moves. c5 is actually a blunder, and I failed to take advantage of this, but I mentioned in the postmortem, this is the tactic that I had, and you can see it in the opening book. And in this position, knight to b5 is really a good move here. There's two threats, and it's hard to meet both of those threats. The knight could come in here. Knight to c7 is a check and picks up the rook. And notice the rook can't move. So even if it weren't a check, just the fact that that square is unguarded is allowing the knight to come in and win the rook in the corner. And there's also knight to d6, where the knight comes into a square inside the enemy camp, protected by a pawn. And that's often an idea in the French defense. And both these turn out to be really excellent for white. Let's see, the chess engine preferred line was to castle here. Give up the rook in the corner and then grab this pawn on d4. And the knight is not really getting out alive, so you haven't lost a whole rook. You've just lost the exchange. And you have a little bit of compensation here in terms of weakening the center. And this bishop will be liberated soon when you play b6 and bishop b7 to trap that knight. They'll be opening up some lines for the bishop. So, black can play that, but white is better. You might think, well, what's wrong with knight b6? That would get the knight out of the way so that c7 is protected. But the chess engine thinks this is just losing. First, the knight comes in here with check. The king has to move, and then you can grab a pawn here. And this knight is going to be very hard to get rid of, and this knight is losing another tempo. So anyway, all this is good for white, and I failed to take advantage of it. I just continued normal development here with knight f3. So I'm defending against the center, and let's see, he went knight c6, and after at this point I took. And we're just out of the opening book at this point, so we'll stay on this page. He continued to take, and anyway, because I didn't take advantage of his blunder, we've got a pretty typical position. We could have gotten to this by a different move order, I guess, or maybe black has a tempo up because he hasn't castled and he hasn't played a6 there. So Yeah, somehow he's gained a tempo. But looking at it with the chess engine, it seems that it's still a fine position for white. Let's see. So I went bishop e2 here. He castled, and I castled. There he goes, rook to d8, putting his rook in the center. Let's see. I went a3 here. I didn't want his knight hopping into this square, and also I was thinking of playing a b4 here and kicking this knight around and forcing a decision. You know, there's this issue in this position where the knight is always on the verge of hopping into the e4 square, and it can be a very annoying piece. So you kind of want to force the issue until that knight is, you know, until this issue is dealt with. You can't really move this knight on c3, so it's kind of a pain. So anyway, in response to a3, he played a6, and I went b4, kicking his knight, and he hopped in here anyway. I thought this was not good, but well, the chess engine thought it was still okay. And well, one point is I can't take right away. Initially I planned to take, but he would take back, and that would be a double attack. His rook would be hitting my queen, and his pawn would be hitting my knight. So that would be losing material for me. So I had to come up with another plan here, and my knight is hanging. So maybe that's why this move is better than I thought it was. I thought in the long run it wasn't going to be stable there, as long as I still have this knight here. So I play queen d3. And I thought maybe his idea was to play f5 there and try and support the knight. That's sometimes played. I would take en passant, though, and leave his knight fragile there. But he just traded the knight off. So I took, he took, and now he makes the second blunder. So the first blunder was that knight f3 move, allowing me to play knight b5, but I didn't take advantage of that. The second blunder is a little more serious. I played d4 here, and maybe it's a tempting move, you know, it gains a tempo on my queen, but in the long run it just creates a weakness for black, and it's also a bit premature to be pushing those pawns forward. He has castled, he's got his rook out, but his bishop doesn't have a great plan for developing that bishop just yet. So anyway, the chess engine is recommending just playing bishop d7 here, and black is fine. After d4, actually, white is better. I went queen to d2 here. Let's see, I didn't want to block the bishop, and I wanted to stay in front of that pawn, try and keep some pressure on it. Now, the chess engine actually recommends bringing the queen all the way back to e1, and thinks this is almost winning for white. I don't quite see the difference here, but I just followed the chess engine line for a few moves to see what it was thinking. Let's see. Went h6. I suppose that's to keep my knight out of that g5 square. Bishop to d3, blockading his pawn. Bishop to d7, finally getting that bishop off the back rank, and then g4. So this is the chess engine's idea. Just block up the center and go for a kingside attack. And it starts to look pretty dangerous, actually. And notice this pawn is actually in the way of the knight. It's taking a square away from the knight. So it's not, excuse me, it's not so much about this pawn being a weakness as it is just kind of being in the way of his pieces. So he's opened up you know, this diagonal for his bishop potentially, but he's got to get the knight out of the way. So it looks like my attack on the king side is going to be quicker, and black will have to waste some time rearranging his pieces to make them effective. So anyway, that would be the best refutation of that d4 move. But queen d2 also keeps an advantage for white, and he went f6. So yeah, I think he just pushes his pawns forward. He makes 3 pawn pushes in fairly close succession. He played d4 on move 15, he played f6 on move 16, and on move 18 he plays e5, and by that time it's almost over for him. So you got to be careful pushing these pawns forward. They open up your position, but you know, it also opens up the position for your opponent too. So that's the message here. Anyway, I took here, and he took back with the queen. It may have been slightly better to take with a pawn, but in any case, white has an advantage here. I suppose he liked taking with the queen because he maybe gets a little pressure on the f-pawn. But now he's got these scattered pawns, and my f-pawn is not particularly hard to defend. Let's see, he went rook a back to e1, defending let's see. Oh, it's my turn. I went rook a to e1. I'm taking a look at this e pawn. I'm trying to figure out how to exploit it, and I have the move bishop to c5 and star, where there'd be this nice pin on that pawn, and then I can just continue to pile up pressure. Moves like knight g5 come into the picture as well. So this is all looking really good for white. But this final move, this final blunder, can I say final blunder? There's one more. This just gives away a pawn, and his position kind of falls apart at this point. Let's see, the best move according to the chess engine is just to retreat the queen back to e7. He's got to give up that pawn and just try and deal with it. One advantage he has here is actually he's got a line for his bishop now, and he's still holding on to this pawn. Well, I've got an extra pawn in the center here, and I just need to do the same kind of rearrangement, bishop here, and start maneuvering my queen over here, and I should get a pretty dangerous attack against his king. So really his final mistake was taking that pawn. This actually loses a whole piece, because after I take the knight, he can only take back with the queen, and then the queen is in the line of fire of this rook and bishop tactic that I played in the game. So anyway, it's pretty much all over at this point. I spotted the tactic this time and played it, and he has no good way to deal with the check and the threat to his queen. Yeah, I was wondering if queen d5 was an elaborate suicide attempt here, but actually I guess there's nothing better. If he just moves his king, his queen's not defended, so he doesn't even get a rook. This way maybe he's thinking he'll get a bishop for the queen, but well, that doesn't work either, because he gets mated. And those moves happened so quickly I didn't spot at first that rook e8 was mate. But notice that his bishop is still on the back rank, so his back rank was not protected, and that mate was available. Okay, so kind of a fun game. My opponent's rating here, I think it's a mistake. I think this was his first game played on ICC, and you get assigned a rating of 1400 when you sign up, or before you've played any games. And so it's just a provisional rating. So I didn't really gain. I gained a couple of points. I don't know if this was his first game or not, but I did get a note afterwards that this was a provisional rating, and so my rating only went up by a couple points after that. Okay, well, that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.